Manousso Musing with Pattie Porter of ConflictConnections.com on conflict coaching. That is your topic for today.
Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact dependent.
Hey everyone, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Ołowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And I'm Dr. Barbara Manousso, a trainer, practitioner of mediation arbitration, as well as being in Newport, Rhode Island and Houston, Rhode Island. But our market is the world. And we're very, very pleased today to have a world-class conflict coach join us. So welcome, Pattie Porter of San Antonio, Texas. How are you today?
Wonderful. Very, very happy to be here with you.
Well, we're glad you're here. Conflict coaching has a very important role for a lot of mediators. Not all mediators use conflict coaching, but it certainly has its place in a lot of genres of civil cases, might even have its place in family cases. And you have outstanding background. You've been an adjunct professor at Southern Methodist University, ADR programs. You have been a mediator for 30 years now, I think.
Close to it.
Well, you were 9 when you started. We understand. And you also have a lot of background as far as helping other people through the conflict coaching management. You work on a federal level, you work on local levels, international, and you also bring a nurturing, informing people on how to be a conflict coach through Synergy Conflict Coaching. So you hold your resume is extensive. So let me ask you, overall, what is the strength and what does the concept of a conflict coach look like in the mediation process? How does this support mediators?
Okay. So first of all, to clarify, the conflict coach, any professional coach is going to be a partner with the client, unlike a mediator who is neutral to the parties that they're serving. So as a conflict coach, one of the strengths that you have to have in being a partner, not an advocate, two different things, is the ability to really help them bring about self-awareness for themselves and insight into not only themselves, but the other party in the dispute. Now, in terms of mediators, how can it be supportive of mediators? There's a couple of ways, actually 3 ways that it can be very helpful to use conflict coaching or use a conflict coach for mediators. One is if you are mediating a case, but you really know that your party needs support so that they show up effectively in the mediation, right? Controlling their emotions, being able to be clear about what it is that they need, understanding those trigger points so that they don't get triggered in the mediation, and also practicing, if you will, what it is, the key messages that they're needing to deliver, what is it their outcome is. I don't mean the settlement agreement, but overall, why are they engaging in the mediation? I've rarely seen this happen, but I have, as a mediator myself, if I'm doing a caucus, I'm still serving as a neutral, but in the caucus itself, I will be coach-like in the caucus, especially if emotions are escalating, they're not sticking to what they say their key goals are, key messages, how they're showing up in the mediation. So I'll use a number of questions, observation and feedback. So I'll be coach-like with them in each of the caucuses. I have seen some centers, coaching or mediation centers in the United States, especially in my experience with Texas, where they'll add coaching services to the program and have a conflict coach available. So when they're doing caucuses, if they need a conflict coach to be available for the caucus, they will bring in that conflict coach. I haven't seen a lot of that happening, but we've explored and tried to get creative with that. And the third way that I've seen conflict coaching with mediators is, let's say they come up with a settlement agreement, or not for that matter. It could be that in the long-term relationship, whether it's a family situation, a workplace situation, even a neighbor situation, elder care situation, that they put in the agreement that each of the parties seeks conflict coaching to work on the ongoing interactions in the relationship after the mediation is over with. So those are three potential ways that mediators can support or that conflict coaching can support them.
And knowing that and understanding better the role of the conflict coach, tell us, who is seeking your help more? The parties, so people who are actually engaging into the conflict, or professionals like, I don't know, attorneys or mediators themselves or arbitrators? Who is actually more engaged in seeking your services?
So I work in workplace organizations. I work in a lot of federal agencies, private organizations. So generally, it's going to be HR, employee relations, not so much labor relations, or the senior executives of the organization that reaches out to me for conflict coaching. I do get individuals who also contact me, especially if they have a personal situation that's not workplace related. Business partners who are having a problem in their business. If the person doesn't want to do mediation, they will come to me and say, how do I engage differently with my business partner? So it's not necessarily arbitrators or lawyers necessarily reaching out to me because of the fact that I'm working mostly in the agencies. I will get referrals from mediators, especially if the mediators like the parties don't want to come together to mediate. I think you would be the perfect person to work with them. Now, I'm going to work with one side, not necessarily the other side. Unless I'm serving as the mediator, then I will provide conflict coaching to both sides equally to prepare them for mediation.
I see. So, Patty, I am sharing my screen again.
Okay.
On your website, you have some charts. One of them, I guess, compares or contrasts negotiation from mediation, from coaching and facilitation. Could you just give us a few pointers as to how these things differ from one another?
Yes. So this was a chart. I do graphic facilitation, and that was a chart that I had done for the Department of Interior for their program. And can you go back to the chart?
Yes.
I see what I put on there on the.
No problem.
There you go. So we have, mediation. What do we have in there? Mediation. I can't read it. Coaching, mediation, facilitation, and negotiation. Okay, gotcha. So negotiation is, how do we teach people to engage with each other one-on-one directly in collaborative problem solving? So how do we empower them to have those skills before they go to an outside party or within the organization to their ADR program? So it's really about empowering them with skills around conflict resolution. And so that's the idea, is going one-on-one to the person you're directly in conflict with. The mediation, of course, you've done probably many podcasts on mediation, and the mediator is going to be neutral, working with the parties, whether there are 2 or 3 or 4, how many are in the mediation, to try to work not only to understand the issues, but the interests and needs that's driving this conflict, and then being able to come up with some way forward. And again, there's many different mediation models, but the idea is, what are the steps forward, whether there's official settlement agreement or just an understanding and action steps moving forward. The coaching, as I already mentioned, in the professional field of coaching, coaching is about being a partner with the client. I do not meet with the other side, but here's something that's interesting about conflict coaching is I remain neutral to the other side. And the reason I remain neutral to the other side, the other party in the conflict, is I want to challenge that client's thinking. So they don't remain positional about that other person or where that person might be coming from. So it's very clear and very important that I am not taking sides or advocating for the client. So then they think when I do challenge them in looking at the other client's or the other person's perspective, that I can challenge those assumptions, those stories, those motives that they're telling themselves about the other person. So, and that can be a number of sessions when I'm doing conflict coaching, sometimes 3 to 6 sessions. Facilitation, which I do a great deal of, is multi-party dispute. And that can range everything from working with a small team of 12 who are having problems within the team. It could be a whole department, of 50 to 100 people. Sometimes it can be interdepartmental. So there's a whole design process, unlike mediation, where you might do some intake work and then show up to the mediation. But in facilitation, you do a great deal of design work, understanding what the objectives are. And you are also neutral as a facilitator, making sure that you are serving the group that you're facilitating. So I'll just stop there. So those are some differences there.
Thank you so much for that. And if you are listening to this podcast, please make sure you head over to the website ConflictConnections.com and just scroll down and you'll be able to see what we're showing.
Well, Pattie, you certainly bring a lot of tweaking. I think your conflict coaching, your facilitation opportunities for larger groups, and in the workplace, I think one of the interesting parts of employment or the workplace itself is that it's almost like a family. It's very much like a family mediation because they have a relationship. They've probably built a relationship. Something went wrong. Some pot of gold. Somebody didn't get the gold they were expecting, or something just happens between them or among them, and then they are moving forward. People don't want to lose their job. They don't want to feel threatened. We have our Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and so having the security of a job, having the presence of money, overhead, etc. People they're not looking for their lives to be disrupted. So, could you give us maybe a little walkthrough of what it might look like with, let's say, 2 people in the workplace have had an issue with each other. So the manager has come to you, and the understanding is that there needs to be a little conflict coaching, or a little or a lot. And before they get into a mediation, and the mediation might be used for designing a plan on how they're going to work together for the future so that they don't have one of the trips. Do you have, without revealing, of course, who your clients might be, or you can even hybrid a story for us, what this might look like? What steps might you take people through? And do you ever use any tools as a complement to your conflict coaching? Do you have any particular tools that you might use? I know that was a big question, but in my mind, for the workplace, since it has a sense of family, could you walk us through what it might look like if a manager came to you and asked you to help two of his employees, or maybe heads of departments, whatever their positions might be, are still integral to the fabric of the whole. But what this might look like, and do you use any other tools as a complement to your coaching programs?
Okay. So let me think of, okay. So one of the situations that I was dealing with is a company calls me, one of the higher up level leaders called me and said, we've had a conflict for 15 years in this department. 15 years is a
Yeah, I was
long
going to say,
time.
wow.
Because we avoid conflict and we try to sweep it under the rug, and we think we're trying to solve it, and and I'm like, okay, what did y'all do for 15 years to try to deal? Well, we went to employee relations, and we went to the ombuds, and we went to EEO, and none of those things really apply to those situations, and no one wants to sit down and talk to each other. And we've attempted some collaborative conversations, but it just ends in a debate. And so, but over 15 years, even though the original incident is long gone, what has happened is that the team begins to take sides, and now they are polarizing. So, but they still see the problem is the two people from 15 years ago that created the event. They don't see their own contributions to how they are now as a team. So I do a conflict assessment first to determine, is it appropriate for mediation, or is this a team facilitation, or is this a conflict coaching situation? So once I do interviews with all the key parties and so let's say it's a small group, I'll do a conflict needs analysis, and then I make a recommendation to the senior level leaders to say, in order for us to progress, we must first offer conflict coaching. And in fact, I specifically said at this point, mediation would not be effective for these two parties. It would just regress, and it could be very toxic. So I offered conflict coaching I actually offered conflict coaching to everybody because they all had a part in it. So I offered the conflict coaching, which is volunteer, to the parties, and two of them took me up on the offer. Now, because one wasn't the supervisor over the other, they were peers, then I could offer conflict coaching to both me, myself, and I. They did not know that I was coaching one or the other. So I had to be very careful in terms of confidentiality, that I wasn't mixing stories or events. So that's something to be very careful about. They set the goals. All right. So a lot of times when mediators come into my training, they automatically assume that the goal is conflict resolution. That is not the goal. Their goal could be, I need to make a difficult decision about whether I stay here, whether I transfer to another department. Their goal could be, I just need to understand, how in the world did we get here? So it could be that's their initial conflict goal. It could be, I need to have a conversation with this person. I don't want mediation, but I don't even know where to begin to start preparing for this conversation. It could be that you know what, I never want to talk to them except when I maybe pass them in the hallway, and I want to be respectful, I want to be professional, but I don't know that I can do that. So they want to think and act differently. Or it could just be because their triggers are so hypersensitive. They're like, I just need to figure out how to control my triggers, because I know as soon as I see them and they, make a sound or raise their eyebrow, that I just lose it. So they come and they decide what the coaching goal is. Now they can change that goal over the course of a number of sessions. So once we're clear on the conflict coaching goal, then, and each of them will have different ones, then we begin the process. You mentioned earlier, I used the synergy conflict coaching model. So it is a structured process of understanding client goal, because my coaching is based on that coaching goal. So my questions, my any intervention or specific tool that I use, which is primarily very powerful questions and reflection and observation and feedback. Observation and feedback is a very specific goal for coaching. It's very important. So we'll go through the process. There's 7 stages. Two of the biggest stages that really helps them is unpacking a particular event, for example. So they might have had several disputes or several interactions that were disputes, but I asked them, what is a dispute or an event that you want to unpack or deconstruct based on your coaching goal? So we will take that specific event and unpack it. We unpack the triggers, going back to your Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What do those triggers mean to you in terms of your values, your needs, your sense of who you are and your identity? We look at how did that show up in your body and your emotions, so they become more aware of how they're showing up in their facial expressions, their hand gestures. We also look at the stories they're telling on themselves when they're triggered in that moment. Well, when they did that, they were just a total jerk, and they were just, think I'm better, or they're better than me. So they have these stories they tell themselves, and this is where I challenge them on their assumptions and storytelling. What could be other possibilities? And then we go through what was your own external reaction? How did you show up when you were triggered? Well, I shouted, I yelled, I sent nasty emails and copied everybody under the sun. But I didn't want to do that. And then what was the consequence of your behavior? And then we do it all over again from the other person's perspective. What did you say or do that triggered them? This looks at their contribution to the problem that they're found themselves in. And we go through that same, what is the story they're telling themselves about you? Right? How did you wish that they would have reacted or responded to you that they didn't? Well, I wish they would have been respectful or listened. What do you think caused them not to listen to you in that moment? Well, I guess if I had, not pointed my finger and say you're a racial idiot, maybe they would have listened to me, right? So there's interconnections about their part in that. And so we go through this process over 3 to 6 sessions over a period of time. And then this is where they might rechange their goal, because there's a lot of insight and self-awareness that comes up. So anyways, and then we reconstruct, and this is where a lot of observation and feedback, where I'm a mirror to them, to working on the goal. So if it's a conversation and we practice the conversation, then I'm giving feedback on their tone, if they're being sarcastic, if they're not delivering their message, etc. So anyway, so that's kind of the steps I go through in working with them on their coaching goal.
Pattie, as always, Pattie Porter of ConflictConnections.com. As a conflict coach, you make it magic. And it's such an important part for mediators to know that it's an opportunity available and it can be a part of their program. So, Pattie Porter, thank you for being our guest today on Manousso Musing.
It was an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.